Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Congresswoman, for your willingness to continue serving. My welcome to your family, to Matt and to Sam, who I hope will get to enjoy some of this hearing in person. And I enjoyed our conversation and look forward to working with you. I'll just continue briefly on the conversation you were just having with Senator Ricketts. I think our global network of alliances and partnerships and our values are critical to our strength, stability, prosperity, our security. And we've got a global network of allies. China does not. They have nervous neighbors, they have client states, they use coercion, but they do not have genuine allies, as we do. And so they have made a concerted effort to use the UN system to advance their interests, both their different idea and standards for human rights. We believe in an individual right to liberty. They talk about collective rights. We have different standards. We want 6G to be built out on U.S. and Western-friendly standards. They want their standards. So I couldn't agree with you more that fighting for leadership of technical organizations. In the previous Trump administration, I worked closely with his PTO director to make sure that the World Intellectual Property Organization wasn't run by a PRC national, and the ITU, as we spoke about. So I think it's critical. We do have a strategy. I worked closely with Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield on this. As the chair of the appropriating subcommittee, Senator Graham and I worked well together with her to increase funding for junior professional officers, to increase funding for the U.S.-UN mission. If confirmed, will you commit to continuing this work to make sure that Americans and American-friendly leaders compete for and succeed at leading the technical organizations of the UN and compete for and succeed at staffing the junior levels of the UN?
Yes, thank you, Senator Coons, and I enjoyed our discussion. This is one of my top priorities, and this, you're seeing it came up in, as I mentioned, every single conversation. I think the success story of successfully having a candidate defeat China's candidate in the Intellectual Property Organization, that is a model that we need to continue to use in these other technical organizations. And that is, there is bipartisan support. As Tom Cotton mentioned in his opening statement, I was one of the founding members of the China Task Force, which of course led to the setting up of the bipartisan China Select Committee. So there's bipartisan interest, and I also support your approach of strengthening and building on our strong alliances, whether it is AUKUS, whether it is building on the relationships within the Quad, whether it's ASEAN. We have an opportunity to build on those organizations, I think, as partnered within the UN system.
Chairman Risch referenced the sometimes frustrating dysfunction of the UN Security Council, the fact that both Russia and China have used it to block accountability measures. The General Assembly did pass an overwhelming resolution condemning Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, but we couldn't get it through the Security Council. The Security Council did, in September, unanimously pass, because of American leadership, a resolution continuing sanctions, visa bans, an arms embargo for Sudan. So it is not completely without merit. But one of the things the Biden administration advanced was UN Security Council reform to broaden its membership, as you referenced, to include the Global South and to try and move the Security Council more into a functional body. What are your views on what you should do to continue that agenda?
Certainly when it comes to UN Security Council reform, it is very complex. It is very challenging with both Russia and China and the veto on the P5. I would want to work with this committee and, of course, the President primarily on any proposals for UN Security Council reform. In my opening statement, when I was referencing reforms, I was mostly talking about ensuring that all of our taxpayer dollars are going to UN entities that function very well. But I am open to having conversations about how to make it work better. I think we need to have a broader strategy reaching out to countries within the Global South where China's made significant inroads. They've done it by building ports. They've done it through telecom. It's really been a whole-of-government approach. And it's obviously not the UN alone. It's working with Secretary Rubio. It's working with USAID, working with USTR, and significant economic investments that are happening in various
Don't forget the
other
DFC.
countries.
President Trump signed the BUILD Act into law in his first term. The Development Finance Corporation is a critical tool in our toolkit. Before I conclude, I just want to raise my profound concern about an executive order signed yesterday by President Trump that puts a 90-day pause on all development assistance without clarifying the scope of that. Does that include our contributions to UNICEF and the World Food Program, which I think you would recognize, you did recognize, led by Americans, broad bipartisan support, part of the key mission of the UN to promote stability and security by feeding hungry people and bringing stability? Does that include USAID's support to Ukraine's energy grid as Putin continues to hammer civilians through attacks on the energy grid? AID's support for getting energy back online in the midst of winter in Ukraine is pretty critical. Does it include Jordan, a sea of stability in a whole area of chaos? Will development assistance be frozen for 90 days to Ukraine, to our development partnership in the Philippines and the Luzon corridor to compete with China's influence in the region, to Jordan? I hope we can work together to get some clarity, and I hope where there are obvious partnerships that do advance American national interests, that they will move forward quickly.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Coons.
Thank you.